Welcome to Observing Actuality. My name is Harmonic. I heard the most extraordinary story the other day about one of the toughest sailors that has ever lived. And upon reflection, it occurred to me that we're all living in his worst nightmare. Only we're doing it every day. And we refuse to wake up. In 1981, Steve Callahan, an experienced sailor, was on his way back from a solo trip across the Atlantic Ocean when he was met with a fantastic surprise. In his words, there's a big crash on one side of the boat, and water was rushing in. Part of me was saying, you're gonna die, you're going right down with this boat. And the other part of me was saying, shut up and do your job. Steve managed to salvage little in the way of emergency supplies, even after diving back down into his sunken boat. But he did manage to secure a raft, a spear, and some other equipment. Steve used the spear on the fish that swam close enough to his raft for food. However, malfunctioning equipment meant that he wasn't calling for help. Steve had to deal with rain, sharks, at one point a hole in his raft, and intense, unyielding solitude. And of course, there was the drift. Steve would drift for 1,800 miles. For not one, not 10, not even 50, but 76 days. Steve would eventually be rescued by some fishermen, and anyone hearing the story would think that Steve would immediately want to be taken to land. Food, shower, bed. They'd be wrong. Steve had such a supernatural acceptance of his situation that he told the fishermen to finish their work for the day. He could wait. Unbelievable. Now, Steve's ordeal is analogous to the way most of us experience everyday life. We drift by, day after day, seemingly stuck in these cycles that we can't break free from. We normally get what we need, and sometimes what we like if we're lucky, but mostly we just drift. We don't recognize what we have in the way of tangible tools to help us elevate out of our situations. But like Steve, often our most important tools are not the tangible ones. My pops taught me from a young age that perception is reality. And the major determining factor over the quality of our lives is the quality of the thoughts that we choose to invest in, for they decode what we see, what we feel, and what we decide. So the question is, just how powerful is the mind, and how can we leverage that power for our benefit? We've all heard the cliches about glasses half empty and glasses half full. But what about the wine glass? And if you think I'm going to tell you about some new research that supports the idea that drinking wine makes you smarter, I'm not. Drink some water. In his book, Subliminal, How the Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior, Robert Mlodinow cites a perception-shattering study about wine. In it, subjects' brains were scanned in an fMRI machine while sipping on 2 samples of wine. One sample, they were told, came from a $90 bottle of wine, and the other a $10 bottle. Not surprisingly to some of you, both samples came from the same bottle. But when asked to rate which one they enjoyed more, subjects rated the $90 bottle as more, even though they both came from the same one, which was the $90 bottle. Now, here's what shocked me. Even though both samples came from the same bottle of wine, subjects physically experience a greater sensation of pleasure as revealed by their brain scans when drinking from the $90 sample. Now, you know what this means. The next time you have a get-together, you can buy the cheap stuff and tell your guests that it was about 10 times more expensive than what it was. Their brains won't know the difference. Just don't send anybody to get any more when it dries up. Okay, so what? Our brains can trick our sensations. Big deal. But what about performance? In a separate study, researchers split students into 3 groups. They are trying to figure out what kind of practice yields the best results for free throw shooting in basketball. One group was told not to study, the control. Second group was told to study for 30 minutes for the next 30 days, and the third group was told not to practice either. At least, not physically. This group was not to touch a basketball, but instead was to visualize making every shot with perfect form for 30 minutes for the next 30 days. When tested, those who had not practiced showed no improvement. Those who had practiced showed a 24% improvement, and those who had visualized showed a 23% improvement. This is without experienced visualizers. But if you're going to use this technique, I implore you, take it serious, get good at it. If we're still talking about basketball, sit somewhere quiet with your eyes closed or with some light music playing in the background. Give yourself as many details as you can to anchor the experience to your mind. Feel the texture of the ball in your hands. Feel your feet in your favorite pair of shoes. The mechanics your body goes through as you shoot every shot with perfect form. It doesn't matter the sport or the event, the research shows that your performance can greatly benefit. Maybe you've heard about the Iceman, Wim Hof. This dude holds 26 world records, one of which he sat in a bathtub full of ice for 2 hours and suffered no ill effect. He can heat his body, he can bolster his immune system, and he teaches other people to do this too. He's been injected with E. coli and using nothing but his breathing and his thoughts, eradicated the bacterium from his body and suffered no sickness. Confucius said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So our brains seem amply supportive in helping us do things that we want to do, but what about things that we don't want to do? A quick glance at smoking addiction reveals that mindfulness training, which is what all of this is as effective as gold standard therapy at getting people to quit smoking, even when they're told to keep smoking. It seems like our minds are just full of untapped potential. So, how do we leverage this power? There are only 4 simple elements in changing how you experience reality through your thoughts. Ben Stein laid out the first when he said, and I'm paraphrasing, the first step in getting what you want out of life is to decide what you want. So, what do you want to be? What do you want to see? What kind of experiences would you like in your life? What kind of relationships do you want to have? What will inspire a sense of motivation and determination and inspiration for you? It's important to ask these questions, and they can change depending on your circumstances, but they will support and be supported by the following elements. Number 2, ask yourself questions. What kind of behaviors or patterns or perspectives are sabotaging you, holding you back? Which ones would you like to change or get rid of completely? It's especially important to ask yourself questions when you're triggered or experience an intense or emotional response. It may be that you are right to feel the way that you feel, but that does not mean that you are right. You ask in your head, you ask out loud, you ask the universe, nature, your deity of choice, whatever you trust for a sincere and honest answer. Number 3, be open to the answer. Sometimes you're going to get feedback that you don't like, and that's great because that's going to change how you interact with your life. But be aware, if you're not asking a friend, let's say, if you're asking an esoteric source like God, sometimes it can take time for events to shape and mold into a clear and piercing picture that resonates with you for the question that you asked. Respect that process. And number 4, and this is critical, be ready to take action. It doesn't matter how much new information you get, how much support or new insights you receive, if you're not willing to take the actions necessary to change your circumstances and advance your life. Our minds are our most powerful and misused tool. If we don't direct them, we'll keep creating cycles and situations that we don't like, we don't want, and worse still, we'll miss opportunities that we could have taken advantage of, but we didn't because we weren't paying attention. It's as if we were all born onto a boat, And we were told, as long as you stay on this boat, you'll always have food. And we were also told that there's treasures out there in the vast waters, but few people find it. You're probably not either. But maybe you've tried your luck. Maybe you've looked. Maybe you've scavenged and you found a few things, but you threw it all back because none of it was gold and shiny. But that was before. Now, you'll use curiosity to get what you want. Now, you know that everything that you find is valuable to helping you build a life off the boat. Now, you know that the riches were never gold. It's the perspective that you get from challenging your assumptions, paying attention, waking up, and taking some risks. Steve Callahan could have died and given up on any of his 76 days adrift at sea. And maybe if you would have asked him beforehand how he could survive such a scenario with so little in the way of supplies, he would have said, it's impossible. It ain't gonna happen. But his mind knew better. It said, do your job. Steve used this experience to travel the country giving talks, wrote a best-selling book, and even invented the emergency raft that he wished he'd had. Steve did all of this because he took advantage of one of the most powerful secrets that few of us are aware of. The secret is this: you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness. You're the observer of your thoughts. And as such, you can choose which ones to invest in. The ones that cripple and freeze you, or the ones that inspire and empower you. We've seen that the stimulus doesn't matter. And while you can't cherry pick your thoughts, you can choose which ones to invest in. All that matters is changing what happens around you from a roadblock to a speed bump, from living in a waking nightmare to a living dream, from drifting to direction. You don't have to change everything overnight, and you don't have to change the whole world. You just have to change yours, one curious thought at a time. Thank you for joining me here with our initial video on observing actuality. If you got something new out of this, let me know. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website for the extension to this video if you're curious about more of the content that we featured. The extensions are just that, extensions on things that we can't fit into 10 or 12 minutes. And check us out next time for our discussion on shadow work. And as always, please remember to breathe with curiosity.